Our opening words this morning are from the second chapter of the book of James. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith but do not have works? Can faith save you? If a brother or a sister is naked and lacks daily food, and one of you says to them, "Go in peace, keep warm, and eat your fill," and yet you do not supply their bodily needs, what is the good of that? So, faith by itself, if it has no works, is dead. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I by my works will show you my faith.
When I learned I was being relocated to the Dallas area by my company, I began somewhat anxiously to look for a place to live. I knew little about the region, but my company paired me with a relocation buddy to help me learn the lay of the land. I remember poring over maps, seeing city names I had never heard of. One caught my eye, White Settlement. I thought surely that must mean the town was founded by a family named White. But after a quick check on Wikipedia, I realized it meant exactly what it appeared to me. Perhaps one day they will decide to change that name. When I flew in to meet with my relocation buddy, we sat down at the Texas Roadhouse, getting a taste of the local cuisine, I reckon. I asked him where he thought would be a good place to live. Hurst, Euless, or Bedford, he said quickly. Colleyville, Grapevine, and Louisville are too expensive. Arlington is fine, but the traffic is terrible. I asked about Irving, or Dallas, or Fort Worth. He shook his head. No. They have public transportation. I was confused. In Phoenix, where I had been living, buses and trains ran consistently, and bike lanes were part of everyday life. But here I was told public transportation was undesirable. It lets certain people into your neighborhood, and it leads to higher crime. I was shocked. In Arlington, the largest city in the United States without public transportation, civic pride came not from mobility, but from football stadiums. Here, mobility had been sacrificed for a myth of protection, profit, and pride. Perhaps that is why I eventually decided to drive for a rideshare company. Partly for extra money, partly from curiosity. I wanted to see what stories unfolded when strangers met in the sprawl of Dallas-Fort Worth. In a naive way, I was also wanted to show the benefits of going electric. In the same encouraging way to others to follow my path into electric vehicles. I loved talking about my car. At first, I thought it would be simple. I give a ride, they pay a fare. I assumed most people use rideshare as I had, airport runs or a safe ride home after a night out. Some features even seemed clever. I would sometimes lift home, using the app filter that would only give me rides headed in the direction that I was heading. It felt efficient, even fun. But I quickly learned the truth. For many, rideshare is not a luxury. It is survival. Uber and Lyft, for all their flaws, fill the gaping hole left by the absence of public transportation. They are often the only way home for workers whose pay doesn't provide enough for the luxury of a car ownership. The only lifeline for an elderly person who doesn't feel safe to drive. The only way a parent can get groceries for their family. The only way whose car is when their car is getting repaired or recently become undrivable due to a breakdown or an accident. The only way for who have made the regrettable decisions such as getting a DUI and are trying to do the right thing. Driving opened my eyes. I saw how the rideshare economy reshaped labor, how drivers carry the risk while companies collect the profits. I saw how people who rely most on these rides are often those our society has left behind. At first, it seemed harmless. Extra money in my pocket, a way to help people get from place to place. But the more I drove, the more I noticed the shadow side of this new economy. Rideshare companies present themselves as innovators, disruptors of the old taxi system. But behind the glossy app interface, their business model depends on shifting risk away from corporations and onto individual drivers. When I signed up, I was told I was not an employee, but an independent contractor. That means no benefits, no health care, no retirement, no sick leave, no unemployment insurance. For me, this wasn't really a concern. I wasn't dependent on rideshare for a living. But for those who are, it's a very different story. The car, the gas, the insurance, the repairs, all of it is on the driver. If they're in an accident, yes, the company insures them, but often with sky-high deductibles that wipe out earnings, not to mention the time lost while their vehicle is out of service. The pay is unpredictable. Fares are cut, bonuses vanish, and after gas, tolls, and maintenance, drivers sometimes earn just a few dollars on the hour. A study from MIT suggested that many drivers earn less than minimum wage when expenses are accounted for. And it isn't just the drivers that suffer. By undercutting public transportation, rideshare creates dependency while city leaders cut transit budgets. Then, once the system is weakened, fares rise. The harm spreads wider. Taxi drivers, many of them immigrants who invested years and thousands of dollars into permits, lost their livelihoods overnight. And tips? Rare. Most riders are stretched thin themselves, using rideshare because they have no other option but to skip the tip at the end of the ride. All of this is sold to us as choice and freedom. But whose freedom is it really? The company's freedom to profit, or the driver's freedom to scrape together survival? Yet, despite all of this, people rely on it. Because when you don't have a car, when you live or work where buses don't run, when wages don't stretch, when housing costs soar, what choice is there left? No car, no choice. One evening when I was pulling out of my parking garage at work, when a ride dropped into my app, a pickup at a Sonic in Euless. When I arrived, James was standing by the curb. "Thanks, man," he said, climbing in. "I like your car. I've never been in one of these." He spoke my love language. I love talking about my car. Have I told you that? He took his time, slowly sitting in the car, stiff and slow, almost like an elderly person. I asked if he needed some help. "Do I need to pull in so that you can get in my car easier?" He said, "No, I got it. It's been a long day, but I'll get it." He wore his work shirt, a hat, shorts with tennis shoes, white socks pulled high on his calf. I noticed bright red legs with sore patches. At first, I thought maybe burns from the fryer and wondered why they would allow shorts when working in the kitchen. He carried with him his dinner, likely his free meal as an employee, and along with the aroma of working in a fast food restaurant filled my car. It made me hungry. Unlike many writers who put in AirPods and stay quiet, James wanted to talk. He asked if I drove for a living. I told him no, that I work in IT, but I did this on the side. He looked so young, child almost. No beard, no wrinkles. Yet he told me he was 27 years old. Yet at the same time, so old, as if his body had lived a hard life. His voice softened. My friend's been sick. He hasn't been able to work. I need to bring him something. At his first stop in yet another maze-like apartment complex, and of course it was the furthest apartment in the back of the complex, James pulled out a thick stack of $1 bills, his tips from Sonic. He carefully counted out $30, counted it twice, and disappeared inside with the meal that he had with him. Before he left, he turned and asked me, "You're going to wait for me, right?" Calling another ride usually costs a lot more. I told him, "Take all the time you need." I wasn't about to leave, as I was bearing witness to a saintly act. He returned a few minutes later without the bag of food and said, "I gave him as much as I could." On the way to his next stop, I asked if he lived at home with his parents or anybody else, and he said that he didn't, and he was trying hard to make it on his own, but his diabetes often made him too sick to work. And he had nearly died in the hospital more than once. But he was trying. He was from a rural part of the state, and there simply wasn't much work for them there, he said. My parents can't afford much themselves, let alone take care of me. He told me that he had made mistakes and that he didn't take his illness that seriously. It was only after his mom recently made a video of him in a coma on a hospital bed, clinging to life, where he told me that he realized he needed to start taking better care of himself. That explained a lot to me. The bright red legs with sores was a sure sign of the effects of diabetes, causing poor blood circulation in his legs. His crippled body was him standing on his feet all day with that poor circulation, tired, sore, and yet that's all he could do. He asked to instead be dropped off at a convenience store near his motel. He was living in a motel. I stopped, I turned to him, and pressed a $50 bill into his hand. "Thank you for helping your friend," I said. When James counted his stack of crumbled up $1 bills to help his sick friend, I realized that he was willing to risk his own rent money for someone else's survival. His mouth fell open, showing badly decayed teeth and a face scarred by poverty and a body riddled with disease. "No, really?" he asked, tears filling his eyes. I said, "Yes, really. You took the time to help your friend, and I can tell you that you need this." He wiped away tears from his eyes, still in shock, and told me, "I didn't know how I would make the rent this week, but now I can." We often marvel at billionaires like Gates, whom give more than 50% of their income away to various causes. Such generosity, we tell ourselves. Yet Gates, through his philanthropy, really never puts himself at any risk. Who really was being more generous? Bill Gates Billions or James's $30 and a meal? A 2010 study at UC Berkeley found that the poor are often more generous than the wealthy. James was living proof. On another evening, Cynthia climbed into my car. Well-dressed, kind, polite. After we started driving, she turned to me and said, "I hope you're not too alarmed, but you're taking me to the hospital. I'm having trouble with my pregnancy." I kept my voice calm, but inside I was very nervous. She spoke with a nurse the entire way. At one point, she said to the nurse, No, I don't think we need to have an ambulance meet us." Maybe I should have insisted. Maybe I should have made that call. But I also knew this was likely her only option, because our healthcare system isn't built for people like Cynthia. We made it to the Baylor Hospital, navigating around police cars blocking the emergency entrance. I left her in care of her nurse, but I carried her story with me. That wasn't the first time I felt like someone's ambulance. It wasn't the last. James and Cynthia are just two stories, but they reveal something larger. Rideshare is not just about technology or convenience. It's about survival for those who ride and the exploitation for those who drive. There's a phrase some of you may have heard of before, the poverty tax. The poor in our community often end up paying more, far more, just to survive. When you can't afford regular medical care, you put it off until it becomes an emergency, costing 10, 15, 20 times more. When you're late on rent, the fees and penalties pile up, making the next month even harder. When you can't afford housing near your job, you pay not only in money for gas, but in time stolen from your family and given to child care companies. When you can't qualify for a new car loan, you are forced into an older one that breaks down more often with higher repair bills and higher interest rates on loans. There are many traps that unfold for the poor as well. Oftentimes, when ends don't meet, they depend on predatory loan companies that charge exorbitant fees and interest, making it more and more difficult the next month. These extended stay hotels, such as Budget Inn suites, are supposed to be only for temporary situations, but they often take enough rent from people like James, they can never afford to get out of it. Oftentimes, rent for a decent apartment is even a bit cheaper, but the large deposit, the first and month-last rent payment requirement make it an almost impossible dream. Furthermore, with no poor or no rental history, they often don't even qualify for a better place, keeping them trapped in an endless cycle of finding enough to scrape by week by week. Poverty itself becomes expensive. And yet the solution is not a mystery. It's right in front of us. Imagine a public transportation system so robust, so dependable, so easy to use that it becomes more convenient than driving. Everyone wins. Those who want the freedom of owning a car still have it. But those who are starting out or struggling to make ends meet would no longer have to wonder, how will I get to work? How will I afford the gas, the insurance, the parking? Businesses win too. They no longer need to spend millions on parking structures. Small businesses thrive when people walk past their storefronts instead of speeding past them in traffic. And the environment wins. Fewer cars means fewer emissions, cleaner air, and less traffic for even those who still want to drive. It's not just about buses or trains. It's about justice. It's about whether we choose to punish the poor for being poor, or whether we create a system that truly serves all. Every ping on my rideshare app carried not just a fare, but a story. James helping his friend while fighting for his own health and survival. Cynthia riding to the hospital with her unborn child. Each one reminded me we are all interconnected. We depend on one another more than we like to admit. As Unitarian Universalists, we are called to hold up this truth, that the worth and dignity of every person cannot be subcontracted away, cannot be outsourced to the gig economy, cannot be left at the mercy of algorithms. May we be the people who notice those left behind. May we be the people who offer more than just a ride. May we offer the road to dignity, compassion, and justice. So mote it be.
Our closing words today come down to us from Tolstoy. He said, "I sit on a man's back, choking him and making him carry me, and yet assure myself and others that I am very sorry for him, and wish to ease his lot by all possible means, except by getting off his back."